Hello, hello, and welcome to Friends and Authors Live. I'm Rosa Linda Roman here with my good friend AKVS, also known as Aash, and I am checking in from Taos, New Mexico, which is about 3.5 hours north of where we live. And I was nervous because the internet is spotty where, I don't know if you've ever been to Taos, Aash, but it's pretty remote.
Yeah, no, I've actually never been to New Mexico, so we'll have
Oh,
to remedy
we have
that
to
at
remedy
some point.
that. Yeah,
Although
we do.
Samuel saw the picture of the bear and he was infatuated. Uh, so
I should pull that up just because I think our viewers would appreciate that. Let
yeah,
me see if I can
absolutely,
find that. Yeah, that
absolutely.
was
It-
worth showing. Give me a few moments and I'll pull that up. So basically, what Ash is talking about is we had a huge bear. We have a little man-made waterfall in the backyard, and when we built it back in the day, our neighbor up the road said, "Oh, well, now I know where the bears will be." And we thought he was just messing around. Oh, no, he was not messing around. And let's see if I can find it. Give me one more moment. I know it's here somewhere. I take a lot of pictures if you don't know. I know Ash knows that. Here we go. Here's the picture at least. Okay, let me share this. Um, Share screen and Google. This is the bear that was in the backyard, and it was quite a bear. It sauntered away. We have a German Shepherd, and she was going crazy, Nala. And the bear kind of was like, "Yeah, I don't know if I care that you're barking in my face." And it sauntered off after it got a drink of water. And so there you go. That was the bear.
you have to name the bear, I think, right?
Yeah, yeah, and actually, this is very relevant, I think, because today we're talking about C.S. Lewis, and one of my all-time favorite C.S. Lewis books or book series is the Chronicles of Narnia, where the animals talk, and it's all about the talking animals. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then it goes into all these different books. I think it's a 7-book series, including The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which, of course, my family named our boat after that. Our boat was called Don Treader. So when you said to me, Ash said to me the other day, he's like, "Oh, we gotta talk about C.S. Lewis when it comes to writing." And I was like, "Okay, I'm intrigued."
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So my thought process was we've done a fair amount of technical shows. We've had a fair amount of guests on recently, subject matter experts, Pip, Danny, uh, Blake, that sort of thing. And you know, one aspect of what we're doing is also craft, right? The actual coming up with the stories and outlining them and the structure of the books. And we haven't really talked about that as much.
Mm-mm.
Everybody has their own way of doing things, and authors will share their thoughts. But I recently came across um, a really, really interesting perspective on what's important about writing and how to write a book that is universally appealing. Now that's quite a
Mhm.
statement because very few
Yeah, it
books
is.
are universally appealing. But I found it to be fascinating, and then so I thought our viewers might enjoy some of these insights, especially because it deals with two legendary authors as
Okay.
well.
You mean
So I
not
guess
Rosa Linda and AKVS?
uh, a bit more prestigious than at least AKVS
More
for now.
legendary than that.
More
Okay.
legendary, yeah. And I've sold a few more books. So yeah, I guess we'll just get into it.
Yeah, please.
So I'll set the stage a bit. You know C.S. Lewis, and everyone's heard of J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yes.
Now there's a lot of overlap there. In that they were first and foremost they were very good friends, um,
Okay.
and I think Tolkien, when Lewis passed, says something like, this is my heart tearing open. I'm not sure if I can deal with this, something along those lines. And they both had very interesting. They had so much in common. They're both British. They both served in the trenches of World War One in the British Army,
Wow.
and they both ended up on the faculty at Oxford.
Oh, I
concurrently.
didn't know that.
And so naturally, if you're both authors, both Army vets, the same Army, the same war, and you know, so they were actually very good friends. And
Wow, that's cool. I didn't know that.
yeah, it gets really interesting really quick. So the thing is, just like we do, just like folks do, you know, we talk about craft, we try to teach other things, share things that we like, because that's what authors do. We seek out other authors because they're our tribe. So they had some differences between them, but they were both classically trained in you know the education system of England at the time, the Greeks, the Romans, Latin, that sort of thing. And this is where it gets interesting. So C.S. Lewis had studied a lot of classical Greek mythology, literature, and in the language as well. I think they both spoke. I'm not sure about um, Tolkien, but I'm fairly certain Lewis spoke Greek as well. And this is where the language gets really interesting because in English, we only have one word for love. Whereas but there are different types of love.
Yeah.
And don't worry, I'm not turning into a romance writer. You'll see where I'm going with this. So
I,
so
I
so
would love to see that, but I didn't
yeah,
expect that you
yeah,
would.
yeah. Well, ultimately, you'll see my point. Eventually, we're all going to be romance writers in one way, shape, or form, from what I've learned. So the Greeks had multiple words for love and for the different kinds of love. And the first kind of love is storge. Okay, yeah. Okay, so good. There we go. So storge, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly because I don't speak Greek, but
Yeah.
storge is it's familial love, it's love for surroundings, nostalgia, your childhood, the kind of things that you grew up with that you cherish, or the people that you cherish, your family. Okay?
Okay.
So that was the Greek that sort of love the Greeks penned as storge. Philia is the second kind of love, and that's love between friends. And by that I mean soldiers, brotherly love. Philadelphia is named after that, but a lot of it has to do with companions, soldiers, people who go through things together, colleagues, that sort of thing. Eros is the most easy for us to understand. That's romantic love, and
Hmm.
that is what it is.
Yeah.
And then the last one they call agape, and agape people say is very rarely achieved, but that's a selfless kind of love for society or doing something, selfless souls who do stuff not for themselves, not but for society or for some greater good.
Hmm.
And that's the
Interesting.
hardest to achieve. So the thought process is, when you love a book and you read it, and so I'll read a book and I'll think, oh, this is awesome. And then I'll pass it on to a friend and say, hey, Rosa Linda, check out this book. This is an awesome book. And
Yeah.
and you'll look at it and you'll read it, and then you get back to me and you say, it was a fine book, but you didn't have the enthusiasm that I
Yeah.
necessarily had for it. Lewis's thought process was each of your readers, this is the most base driver of a story, is relationships between people. And everybody has one of these four that is most intriguing to them in general or at that point in their life, right? So if you think about like someone who is really a romance reader
Hmm.
may really value the Eros kind of stuff, whereas for me it's interesting, but it's not. But me as a guy who likes reading writing historical fiction and military fiction about war stories about Marines and soldiers who faced hardship and get the Fila stuff is more appealing. And so you have all these different things, but
Interesting. Because
where it
I
gets
think for me, it's like the storgy.
Yeah,
the link between
exactly,
family.
exactly, and it's different. And so what his thesis was you should go back in your stories, or even the way you structure your stories, and these four things, the three definitely, agape if you can achieve it, uh, are some of the most powerful universal binds. And the masterpieces, the books that pretty much everyone likes, have all four in them,
Hmm.
and the opposites, um, as kind of the underlying grind, overall. And I'll give you an example, right? And this is where J.R.R. Tolkien comes in, right? So if you think
Okay.
of Lord of the Rings,
Right.
right,
Right.
which most people are familiar with, it's a masterpiece, and it contains all four elements. And then if you go through a ton of really successful movies and really successful novels, they have a lot of these elements in them. It's one of these things where once somebody names it and identifies it, you say, "Oh, that's true. I never
Mhm.
saw it that way, but it's
Hmm.
true. It's there." So, for example, I'll give you an example from Lord of the Rings and Storgi, right? Or
Okay.
that whole series. You have the two hobbits. They're always talking about all the meals they eat and the Shire and how they want to protect the Shire and how it's this, it's the home and the hearth and all of this. And that's a form of love. Like there are people who are, nostalgic for family relationships and the foods you grew up on and the places you grew up on and those kinds of memories and stuff. And that's really good for setting the stage because you draw the person in because they'll start reflecting upon the things the source of story in their own life,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And
It
the threat
resonates with them because they can identify with that
and
part of
all of
in their
this,
own
I'd
life.
like to think, have some elements of Storge, and then there's the opposite of that too. That there's a threat to the Shire, right? And
Mm.
so it's a threat to your hearth and home and those relationships and the four lunches that hobbits have every day and that sort of thing. And then Fila is very apropos to military stories, quest stories. Fellowship of the Ring, you have the hobbits and the elves and the ranger and the dwarf. They're all on this dangerous mission together, and they bond and become brothers and that sort of thing. So that aspect of the story is appealing to folks who are interested in that area, and that's actually the area as someone who writes military fiction and likes history. That really appeals to me, like reading about the Marines on Iwo Jima, but you see it in
Right.
expressed in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Um, there's also the Eros component, which is more romantic love, which is there, not as much as in some other books, and it can be the focus of some books. But for Lord of the Rings, I think the ranger character and the elf girl, they are in love, and she actually, I think she has to give up immortality to marry him, which that's quite an
Okay.
ask. I mean, like, love's great, but if you have immortality and you're going to give it up for someone, for to lead a human life, like it better be all that in a bag of chips, right? So, but that's a component as well.
Yeah.
It's another very powerful force, right? And the interesting about it is they also have um, the opposite. For example, the opposite in the Phila, where you have the friends in the group. The
Right.
opposite of that is the group is too inclusive. Like if you're not part of that group,
Hmm.
you're excluded. So you see like
Okay.
that's a negative. For example, like if you read a book about, oh, these Navy SEALs were on a mission and they have every right to be proud. They're Navy SEALs, but they discounted the advice of a local who wasn't a SEAL because the person wasn't a SEAL and they didn't esteem anyone who wasn't, and this turned out to be fatal for them because the person was
Hmm.
a local expert and told them like, if you go here, the Taliban will get you. If you go there, it's safer, right?
Got
But
it. Yeah.
they didn't,
Yeah.
and Eros obviously, uh, love story, romantic love can go bad. You can have someone who's over possessive and controlling and all of these things.
Yeah.
And then the most interesting one, which he said was the hardest to write, or it didn't necessarily appear as much, is agape love. And agape love is more selfless. And some of the examples that I would cite, there is an example in Lord of the Rings, and
And also in C.S. Lewis's books in the Chronicles of Narnia.
exactly, and you probably know these both, I mean, because these were all in the Chronicles of Narnia. If you just go through and look for examples of this, once you see the structure of this, you'll see it everywhere.
Yeah.
And but
Because
going back,
Aslan, which is the lion figure, he would
that's agape, right? Well,
represent the agape.
why he attacked the girl, clawed her because of what she was
Mhm.
doing. But agape, even in Lord of the Rings, agape, the character of Samwise, right? Samwise a gardener. Like he's not. He's only there out of love for his friend, and he's taking all these dangers on um, for the greater good, right?
Mhm.
Or
Yeah.
another one of these movies, um, Schindler's List, right? The
Mhm.
character of Oscar Schindler starts off as a greedy businessman. By the end of the movie, he's so wrapped up in trying to save as many people as he can. He says, "Hey, take this ring. Maybe that'll save 4 people. Take this watch. Maybe that would save 2 people. Why do I have this car? I could have sold it and saved 2 more people." And so that's also very powerful too. If you can achieve a character who gets to that level, because that tends
Interesting.
to really attract people. So
Wow.
I'm going back through some of my books, and I'm, this new series that I'm excited to be working on. And if you think about it, in a way, it's all there because these are all. This captures, for me at least, pretty much the breadth of human relationships,
Right.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
So,
I can't think of any relationship that doesn't fall in these four categories.
or some combination, or some. And so, yeah,
Mhm.
I thought that was particularly interesting,
That
and
is.
it's kind of a fun exercise because if you go through your favorite books, your favorite stories, you mentioned the Narnia stuff, it's
Mhm.
all there. It's all there.
Oh, for
I
sure. That like Storgy would be there's the four Pevensie siblings, Lucy, Peter, Susan, and Edmund. I almost forgot him. And there's that. And then of course the friendships with like Tumnus, the fawn, and the beavers, and there's lots of friendships in the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Caspian becomes a dear friend and is a big part of that. I don't. There's a little. That's the Eros one. It's more of a children's series, so it doesn't come up so much. But there are some romantic leanings in, like with the Star Lady and all that. And then agape is, I really do think Aslan represents that, because that's the idea that, even like you said, even some of the things that seem mean or like harsh are actually for the greater good, for a positive reason. So it's fascinating to look at it that way.
it's interesting because our tech wizard Danny King, the first thing he said when we talked about it, I shared the concepts with him. He said Aslan as well for agape. He
Yeah,
said
he did.
that's absolutely, yeah, he did. Next time you talk to Danny, ask him. Uh, that's absolutely what he said. You both said the same thing. You know,
That's funny.
uh, folks who write different genres and that sort of thing, but you both recognized it immediately. That's agape,
Yeah,
right?
and I'm now that you just are telling me this, I'm going back through my series. I write mystery thrillers, and I'm going back and looking at the relationships in my mind, where they fall in and how much. I'm curious about the agape. That's something I'm going to have to sit with and think about,
Well,
because that may be more of a greater theme of like what's the motivation for
well,
why she does what she does.
it's interesting too because, as you know, Danny being the tech wizard, you can, if you put the text of your book into one of these entities, and so people use the hero's journey, or was it Save the Cat, whatever to
Mhm.
structure their novels. You can also ask it. These concepts are very familiar. I mean, are well written. Analyze the sections of my story, or the first third, the second third, for these concepts and how they overlap. It's really, if you go through just about any, like I went through westerns, I went through the Magnificent Seven. Um, there was an HBO series that I was a huge fan of called Band of Brothers, which tracks, a company of American 101st Airborne paratroopers from training all the way through Normandy and Bastogne and back home. And these
Mm,
are very different guys who were bonded by the fact that they were American soldiers fighting in Europe during the war. It's called
yeah.
Band of Brothers, right? And it talks about how close they are and what they would do for each other. So it's really interesting to analyze the stories that you like and the stories that you're creating within the parameters of this framework.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wonder, so you're saying C.S. Lewis kind of came up with this, or is it just something they
No, it's no,
collectively?
no, it's one of his books. If you look at his books, The Four
Mm,
Loves is one of his books. Now, I'm not
okay.
sure if it was necessarily limited to writing, because he was towards the latter part of his life very religious, very being a
Hmm.
theologian. So
Yeah.
he might have been analyzing, that from a religious perspective.
Yeah.
But it definitely is something that writers have picked up on and incorporated into, and in movie directors and that sort of thing. You hear you I saw a podcast where people were saying, well, that I have to have more counterfeit in this section, or the eternal quest for a character with agape, because that's gold if you can find one, right?
Mm,
The
interesting.
selfless.
So they apply that to storytelling, and um, if you can, because you were saying how to find a story, how to create a story, because we're authors and we're talking about being
Yeah.
authors, how to create a story that's more universally appealing. If you apply, if you touch on these four areas, potentially you reach a wider audience.
Yeah. Or if you are, a genre specific person, it's how you flesh it out. Neither of us are romance writers. Romance is primarily in the Eros realm, I would imagine.
Hmm.
But to make it more palatable, make it more balanced, could Eros evolve into agape? One of the characters being selfless, because that's the other thing that's really, really interesting is the Greeks, and I actually agree with them. Modern society tends to rank these with Eros as the highest form of love, romantic love between individuals. The Greeks didn't feel that at all. The Greeks felt agape was the highest form, and philia could be higher as well, right?
Interesting.
The bond between soldiers in war, the brotherhood that they share in life and death situations, actually, is more powerful than some marriages or relationships or and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
So it's fascinating. So, for me, writing historical fiction, and now I'm going to be writing a new World War II series. It's going to be heavy on Storge and Philia, right? I'll try to, you know, have some romance in there because I'm not completely a knuckle dragger. But I know what the wheelhouse is
Yeah.
for me. It's Philia, and that's what my readers expect, and that's what they're going to want. Because
Hmm.
you read war
Yeah.
stories not for the not for the carnage so much. Hopefully there's some action, but the brotherhood, the bonds between men, and you can talk about Storge, you can talk about women on the home front and what they endure. This is prior to women being in more prominent roles in the military, like in World War II, right, and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. And then there's selfless aspects to it as well. But yeah, it's really interesting to look at your story after you've got your outline and go back and check for this framework and see, am I addressing
Yeah.
this? Am I-
And I'm really curious too, because this next series that I'm working on, I really envision, and I'm a little nervous jumping into it, but I envision multiple protagonists and from different perspectives, not just the main character, but other characters telling their stories as well. And now this is going to be in my head. Now that you've shared this with me, I think that's because I felt like I wanted each one to have the fullness of their character. And really, the way you find out the fullness of someone's character is in relationship with others. I mean, you can do a lot of like thinking on your own and finding out what they're thinking, but it's when there's conflict or pressure points in between different characters and in different relationships, that's where you really learn what they're made of, right? And so I love the thought of applying this and looking at, okay, what are the, what's the storge of this person? What's the motivation from a storge perspective, or the philia? Yeah, that's very interesting. Really is.
And it's really good too, because a lot of these writing framework methodologies, they talk about what's happening in the story versus what's happening in the character. Like they have some misconception that I'm so powerful I can protect my people from all forces, and that's proven wrong, right, through life. And so either they learn from that, and if they don't learn from that, it's a tragedy, or it can end up a comedy, or it can end up a quest, right? So so this was kind of the classical, highly educated Oxford professor methodology for story structure.
Yeah, and they obviously were wildly successful. So maybe there's something to this.
Yeah. So then now I have the other end of the spectrum, which I thought I'd share with you, and I think it's especially apropos, given your background as a journalist. So this is long form classical storytelling, but I'm of the opinion that the most powerful storytelling is the oldest, most original form of storytelling, which is the oral tradition, which started with our ancestors sitting around at a campfire, saying, "Hold my beer while I tell you the story." Right?
They still do that, just so you know.
Exactly, we would still do it, right? So, I mean, if you think about it, like, would you rather read a book or have some great storyteller tell you a story in person? Right? Personally, for me, it's the latter, right? But we can't do that. But there are concepts you can incorporate, and I listened to some of these podcasts. There's one great storyteller, and I thought of you when I heard it, and I had to share this with you. So he does short form podcasts, and he makes his living doing that. And he's an exceptional storyteller. And he basically says that the hardest people, so he works with his sister, okay? And he's ex-military, and now he's just a natural storyteller. His sister is a Pulitzer Prize winning former journalist for the Boston newspaper is. And now they have a family business, and she helped structure his stories and stuff. And they were talking very much about and she was saying for her, being a classically trained journalist, and all I know is from what I remember from high school, that the training to give the details immediately and succinctly and clearly, what was it, from who, what, where, when, why, that sort of thing,
why and how,
kills the story. Kills the story unless you save it. You build up to it and save it, for the end. And so on these podcasts, and I'll tell you a really quick story that he shared to demonstrate this concept. He said this story takes place in the 1970s in Utah, and there was a couple on a first date, and it was kind of a dull first date. It wasn't going well. They didn't have good conversation or chemistry and that sort of thing, and they were going to end it and just part their ways, And the guy had an idea. He said, "Look, if you're up for it, I know this beautiful spot up on this hill not far from here, and we could see the moon and the stars and the whole valley. And I just think it would be really cool if you're interested in doing that. And she thought about it, and she said, "Okay, we'll try it." So they did. They got in their car and they drove to this spot, and they were going to hike up this hill to see the view at the crest. And it's a little dark and it's a little cold, so they start holding hands. And at some point, she starts feeling something's wrong. And she looks over at him and she can kind of tell he's feeling the same way, right? That something just isn't right, like that feeling you get. And they continue up to the point where they're two-thirds of the way up the hill. He's walking in front of her, they're holding hands, and he steps on something soft, too soft to be the ground. And it freaks him out. They're already feeling like something's wrong. And so they just decide, let's just get out of here. So they basically about face downhill and just run down the hill because they're both spooked. Get in their car, drive off, and now they're laughing about it. And she's asking him, what was it that you stepped on? And he said, I have no idea, but it was just too soft to be the ground, and I'm just glad we got out of there. Right? So flash forward 30 years. Okay? They ended up developing chemistry. Maybe it was a hike that did it. They ended up getting married, having kids.
The terror.
The whole thing. Exactly. Whatever bonded them. But 30 years later, they're a married, empty nest couple, right?
Okay.
And they're watching a TV show, where the reporter is interviewing that serial killer, Ted Bundy. And one of the questions that the reporter had for Ted Bundy was, when you were out killing people during your criminal spree, was there ever a time that you almost got caught? And he says, yes, absolutely. It was about 30 years on a hill one night in Provo, Utah, and I had just killed somebody, and I was dragging the body across the trail, and this young couple was hiking up there, and the guy actually stepped on the body, and I was about to kill both of them because they were going to discover me. And they flipped out. I don't think they saw me, and they ran down the hill, so I just let them go.
Oh my God.
Right? So his point, and I hope the story wasn't too macabre for people, but his point was, if you just said, I'm going to tell you a story about when Ted Bundy let two people go, two hikers go, or where Ted Bundy almost got caught, that's still the thing. But the fact that I led you up to all this, and there's different elements in it too, that for me at least, the second she agreed to go on the hike with him, I was thinking, girl, don't do that. Like, you just met this guy. You better go out in the woods. Like the dad in me was like, don't do that. You don't know this guy, right?
Same. Yeah.
And then, but you're like hooked, right? Like, now you got to know what happens to her, and and then you figure out, okay, he's a decent guy. Then you're trying to figure out what's a soft thing and all this stuff, and then no one was necessarily expecting the Ted Bundy thing, but it puts it all together, right? So that's another method.
You don't remember the name of the podcast that you heard that on?
Oh,
give him credit.
I don't remember the name of the podcast. I remember the name of the podcaster. If that
what was
helps.
that?
The podcaster, I think it's pronounced Mr. Ballin, Mr. B. Allen, but I think it's pronounced Mr. Ballin. And he has a bunch of, he basically just tells stories like this online of like supernatural or spooky events.
I'll have to look that up. That sounds fascinating.
But yeah.
But it's the storytelling. Like, you had me. I'm like, okay, I got to see what happens. And even when you said he stepped on something soft, I'm like, oh, I'm a mystery thriller writer, so I knew he stepped on a body. Sure.
But I mean, there's other ones too. Like I mean, I could tell you another one. I don't know if we have time for it on this show, but there's another one that's really fascinating that kind of takes you through, like, build it, put a twist at the end, and then give them the payoff they expect, as opposed to, religiously and meticulously guard against giving away teasers that dampen the impact, the climax of
Yeah.
the
I love
story.
it. It's
So,
great. I love talking about storytelling. This was a good episode. I'm glad when we
yeah,
started and Ash said, I'm like, what are we going to talk about this week? He's like, C.S. Lewis. And I'm like, well, I'm sold, but like, what does that mean? And now I'm like, oh, I could talk about this for hours.
yeah, yeah. And interesting thing is, if you go back and look at like some of your favorite stories and movies, and look at that four loves framework, it's pretty easy to see. At least it was for me. And Danny agreed as well, right? So we're
That's
both
awesome.
incorporating this into our outlines going forward.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, we'll have to talk more craft on future shows because I enjoyed this a lot and I learned a lot. So thank you for bringing that to me.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we need a break from the AI, right?
Yeah, I was over it. I have to say that's the nice thing about being up here in Taos. There's it's very low tech and very you're connected to the earth, and there's just not a lot of talk about that. And so it's kind of nice. It's refreshing. I felt sometimes it feels like you're getting the fire hose of people telling you all the things. Oh, you got to do this because of AI, and there's this great thing, and there's great applications. But it's nice to take a break from it sometimes and just look at the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Ash. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you guys all for being here for Friends and Authors Live. We do this every Tuesday at 1:00 Mountain Time. And is it 9:00 where you are?
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, in Europe. All right. That's it. And we will see you next week. I'm Rosa Linda Roman with AKVS, and we will see you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.